Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today. My name's Corey Webb, and I'm Director of Partnerships here at Churn Zero. And I'd like to welcome you to our webinar titled Lifecycle Advocacy, Expanding the CS Remit to Increase Account Value. Before we get started, I do want to remind you that we are recording today's session, and we'll be sending out a link to the recording tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that in your inbox. Throughout the presentation, please submit your questions. There's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we will address as many as we can at the end of the webinar. But please go ahead and submit those. We've also enabled the chat today, so feel free to engage with one another there. But if you have questions for our presenters, it would be easier if you put those in the Q&A just for moderating. Now I'm pleased to introduce to you our speakers today. We have Liz Richardson, the CRO, and Bianca Del Vecchio, managing consultant at Captivate Collective, which is a premier customer advocacy and engagement strategy agency dedicated to helping brands transform customers into passionate advocates. And excited to talk customer advocacy with both of you today. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Corey. We are so excited to be here and we're so excited to talk to a CS audience. Most of the time, we are talking to customer marketers. They have a really happy job. So it's a happy practice. I will have to admit, I think CS might have a slightly harder job most of the time. And so we're so excited to talk about something we're so passionate about and a topic that really is fun and joyful, right, Bianca?
Absolutely. I am so excited to be chatting with everyone today and getting into our content.
Well, Corey did a great job of introducing us. So I'm Liz, Bianca, and
Hi.
please connect on LinkedIn. We would love to connect with you. And if you have any questions after the fact and you want to follow up, please don't hesitate. A little bit more about Captivate if you're confused about what does that mean? Working with passionate customers. So we help primarily B2B SaaS organizations build customer engagement strategies and programs. And all of that is to hopefully leverage the partnership, the collaboration, and the mutual value of customer and brand in order to impact your organization and hopefully your customers as well. That's that give and take relationship, and it's so integral to have success as an organization. And we really do believe your customer advocates are one of the only key differentiating factors and competitive moats in this very fast moving arena, which we are in right now. All right, so we want to get started and make as much use of your time today because I know we are coming on holiday break and a lot of you are like, oh my goodness, we're almost there. We're almost to the finish line. So hopefully you get some really good learning today and you're excited to think about that over break, but we're excited with you. You're almost there. All right, so what is this? This is, why should you care? Why should you care about customer advocacy? I think is the big question. And why is this relevant to a CS audience? Well, as you know, you're already a huge part of your customer success. You are the forever friend for many of you at your organization for your customer. And customer advocacy is a pathway for you to also become an active ally for your internal stakeholders and groups as well. And this positions you to grow your reputation and career and increase the impact of CS as a department as a whole. And so that's the big opportunity we want to talk to you about today. I just want to preface this with, I know you have enough on your plate. When we talk about what should we talk about with advocacy to a CS audience, we definitely talked to people in our CS circle, and they said the last thing that CS needs is another checklist of things to do, and we totally understand that and hear that. You're already doing so much work with customer advocacy, and we're well aware with that, and we want to just give you some tools for honing in on how you can use that work, be more purposeful about it, and then leverage it to both bring value to your customer, additional value to your customer, definitely additional value to your organization, but also additional value to you specifically, whether you're a CS leader or you're a CSM. So hopefully you get a bit of inspiration from today. So this is what we are going to cover. So what is advocacy and life cycle advocacy, and what's that opportunity for you? How can you use that as a growth driver for yourself? And we'll touch a little bit on if you're a leader or if you're CSM. What's some methodology when it comes to life cycle advocacy, and what we will present a 7 steps to help you just get started in the way you framework and think about how to build this into your own day-to-day and remit. All right. Oh. And then Bianca, we have a survey and a prize draw, which
We sure do. We sure do. So stick around.
remember, we're from marketing. We don't leave many things without giving something away or doing something fun. That's just how we roll. All right. All right, so I'm going to dive in and get us started, and we'll be tag teaming here as we go. So advocacy, like I said, we 100% believe this is a very big opportunity for any organization. We're huge believers that your customers and the way you build relationship with them is so integral to your company's success. So what is it? What's customer advocacy anyway, Liz? Well, we like to see it as a business strategy. And this business strategy really first prioritizes the needs of your customers, the success of your customers, which is integral to any type of advocacy. And that in turn builds loyalty and creates a relationship where they become your collaborators in growing your organization, right? And so that expands the impact you can have and how fast you can go and how fast you can grow, because you have this, we used to call them an army of extended advocates who are out there helping you come to market. And you guys are already in there. You who are in customer success are already at the heart of what it takes to build customer advocacy. You can't have, well, typically, I'll say you typically can't have unsuccessful customers who are ready and willing to be advocates for you and be collaborators with you. So that is a key piece of it already. But of course, we're biased, right? You know, you come from an agency that talks about advocacy and builds advocate programs, so you're biased. Okay, granted, probably are. But so we have some third party, right? Because third party proof is much stronger than brand proof, which is the whole point of advocacy. So here's a bit from a report from Salesforce last year, and it just said 80% of customers say the experience is as important as the products and services. So beyond the products and services, what type of engagement and relationship opportunities are out there for your customers? It's very important that there's another layer of opportunity for them to engage with you and see additional value. We also have serious decisions coming in. You guys have probably seen something like this. I would think this is a very popular one to reference. The companies saw significant increases in upsell, cross-sell opportunities when happy customers are leveraged as advocates. So there's a couple ways to think about that. Of course, there's the way to think about using your advocates to go out into the market, go to market. But then the idea of as you leverage them as advocates, they become closer to your brand. And that increases the likelihood that they're going to stick with your brand and want to invest further in your brand because they have a story to tell and they've been asked to tell that story and connect it to their own personal development. All right. And then we have a last here, Forrester's report last year. And it said that companies realize substantial advantages over those companies who are customer obsessed, right? No, there's a lot of ways to frame that, but we know for sure that when you put, like we saw in the definition on the slide before, when you put the needs, desires of your customers first, that's the first step to building advocates. And so when organizations are hyper-focused on that, we will tend to see results that have significant impact on the organization. So you can go check out those third-party resources. But we know, because we do this all the time, like we work with a lot of software companies on what exactly can we do with our customer base. And so if we think about what we call the holistic value of an engaged customer, We know that happy customers or customers who are willing to advocate and collaborate with you contribute so much more to the bottom line than just that contract value, right? So while they might be paying an annual subscription amount, or they might pay for point-in-time services from your team, think about all the other ways advocates can impact true measurable metrics at your organization. So this is the way we think about it with advocacy. They can impact acquisition by influencing new revenue with references, referrals, et cetera. Also, those stories that we use during our prospect campaigns. How fast a deal moves through, creating efficiency because maybe you do put that perfect story in front of them or that perfect reference. Retention, of course, we do a lot of measurements with our customer marketing friends on the over average churn rates of customers who are part of customer advocacy initiatives versus those who are not. And we definitely tend to see stronger retention for those who are actively engaged and creating further relationship with your organization. Of course, happy customers tend to be easier to renew, for sure. And we have the percentage of accounts who have advocates and contacts in those programs is something that we measure as well. And then, of course, they can impact your roadmap and how efficiently you're able to bring the right features and functionality. So when you bring customers into that process, as you know, that can have real impact on the organization as well. And don't forget efficiency. Customers who are willing to help other customers who are struggling, customers who are willing to create content that you don't have to go out and do, customers who are willing to leverage their networks for social reach. Those are also cost savings to your organization that can be measured. So we really like to think of what is the actual value of a customer. And here's a graph that we love to show for this. So if we think about the value of a customer, most of us are looking in Salesforce or wherever it might be, and we're saying, okay, this contract has X value ARR. And that's how a lot of the organization looks at the value of a customer, correct? And even when you're thinking about your renewals and you're thinking, okay, here's how I'm going to prioritize which of these accounts I really need to go after. We tend to look at that value as being how much do they pay every year to our organization. All right. But there's additional way to think about it. So then if we think about that slide that I just went over and how an advocate could possibly play into all those additional impacts for the organization, well, that can create quite a different picture, can't it, of what the value of your book of customers looks like. So for instance, you might have a really small customer who doesn't have a really large annual revenue attached to them. But think about if they've taken 10 reference calls because they're so happy with the results they've seen with your products or services. Maybe they actually just love you. That's a lot of it, right? A lot of you have customers who love their CSM and that relationship. And even as a favor, because they love you so much, they're willing to go write that review, or they're willing to go ahead and really push to go get that customer case study with you. And so if we think about that and we're able to start putting some measurements and thought to, okay, what am I actually impacting at the organization? Those are all metrics we want to think about, and then try to help the organization think a little bit more holistically about what the actual value of your book of accounts actually is. And so part of that is looking at, as customers move through this, they make that initial investment. And then when they look at that positive customer experience, which is absolutely necessary, so that's the people, the processes, the brands, and the mission. And as they continue to hopefully see results with your program, sorry, not with your program, with your product, then we can see that we're able to move them along that path of customer advocacy and ask them to do acts of advocacy, or what we call relationship obtained investments, because you've put in that relationship, you've built that money in the bank, because you've helped make them successful, and they have that brand affinity with you, with your organization, and then you're able to leverage them in acts of advocacy, which then we see that the actual value of that customer or that customer account just starts to exponentially move off the charts to the right. This is a really different way to think about the holistic value of a customer beyond just that ARR. And think about how you might be able to measure that and showcase the impact you specifically are having on the organization related to that relationship that you have with your customer accounts. I do see people like some in the chat. So Corey, I'm just assuming, or Bianca, you guys are on it because I am screen sharing. All right. So just to put this into real life example, I guess it's not real life because these are little stick men. So not real life, but bring it together in a little picture for you. Okay, typically we're looking at ARR. We're looking at possible expansion opportunity here. What's net retention overall? And what's the adoption maybe even of the product itself? That would be a good thing to measure, of course. But that's one way. That's typically how people are looking at their book of contacts. But here is another way. Imagine if you were looking at all of these things. You were not even just looking at those typical four, but what if you were able to measure how much influence sales references have done from a specific account? What about referrals that they've handed over to you, and how much a pipe did that influence? Reviews, a little trickier, but there are ways to think about, okay, how many reviews did your book of business bring into the organization? And of course, those marketing references, how many of your customers got on stage and spoke in public and went to events or did a story? And that's a huge value to the organization as well. So try to think more holistically about your book of accounts and what type of impact you are driving. And this is going to be very beneficial. It's beneficial for your customers, first of all, right? That's always number one. It's beneficial to your organization. And then we also want to point out how it can be beneficial to you as well. So as we think about, Mark, maybe you're saying at this point, Liz, well, that's nice, but honestly, that's not my job, because we have a marketing team, and then maybe you have a smattering of all these different programs for the X Suite for your advocates, and then maybe your entire customer base. You have a community, maybe you've got an advocacy program, maybe you've got a CAB. You don't deal with that. That's not. They come to you, they ask you, hey, can you get them invited or get them into this program? They asked you to send the 10th email this year trying to find the right customer for something. I hear you. Not your program, not how you're measured at the end of the day. You have enough accounts that you've got to make sure don't churn. And so maybe not your main point of focus, but what we're here to say is, yes, all these programs may or may not exist at your organization. Obviously, if they don't, a lot of area for opportunity for you to impact. But really what's underneath all that is that idea of life cycle advocacy. How do we across the customer journey, not just in these programs where they go off and, they're in this group, but how along the entire customer journey can you layer in discovering what these customers desire, how they want to collaborate, building that relationship with them with the goal in mind of the fact that you will be able to ask them to advocate for your organization to increase that overall holistic value of their account beyond just them renewing every single year. And you definitely, you're down there on that lifecycle advocacy piece. There's opportunity at all these important moments in the customer journey, and that's what we're going to dig into. So Bianca is going to take us into how this is a possible growth driver for you as a leader and a CSM.
Awesome. Thanks, Liz. And yes, we'll talk a little bit more, and we have some examples to show you what this looks like in practice from a CS perspective. Because yes, we are coming from the customer marketer and advocacy lens. But before we jump into some of those examples, we do have a pulse. We want to hear from the audience today, want to understand where you're at in your journey when it comes to integrating customer advocacy. So Is it reactive, more ad hoc initiative support when you're asked or approached by marketing or other members of the team? Do you have those advocacy motions that are built into your playbooks and the automation is there? And that's something that you measure as part of a health score component. Are you perhaps running quarterly advocacy support plays? And do you have some sort of reward that you are working towards, that you are trying to unlock by, completing a certain number of those activities? Or are your customer accounts measured on that holistic value that we were just talking about with the lens of advocacy, revenue, impact? So I'm going to leave this poll up here just for a few more minutes as we go through some of those examples. If you just want to give it a little bit of thought, so take your time, let us know where you're sitting. And then when I wrap up this section here that we're going to go through some examples, we'll get Corey to show us where the group is at. But with that, let's take a look. Let's take a look at some of the ways that advocacy can be a growth driver. Looking first at CS leadership. So there's a lot of different ways that from, your team and department level that advocacy can really help drive those initiatives and things that you are already responsible from a CS perspective. So it can help you really assess that retention forecast. You can look to build stronger partnerships with marketing and sales by having those shared KPIs. So working on those together within the organization, really building a culture of customer centricity. So when all teams are aligned across this and really coming from leadership and having that in motion, you really are all on the same page and you create that visibility and that shared experience for your customers. You can showcase the value that your CSMs bring to customers. So again, being able to show how CSMs are supporting customers. We'll talk about some examples of what that looks like in practice. And then also you can position yourself as contributing to all of those go-to-market functions and representing CS. So if we go to the next slide here, there's a real life example, and we're using Chad's dashboard here from Sienna, so VP of Customer Success. And what we really see here is that Chad and team built these KPIs into how they measure their team's performance. So you see things here like G2 crowd reviews, things like case studies. So the CS team is responsible for delivering on these things as well, and it's not just primarily marketing driven. So when you have those measures in place and it comes from the leadership team, that really helps quantify and helps be able to show the value because you're tracking it. So if you don't track it, you can't measure it. So that's one example from a leadership perspective. If we go to the next slide here, what about for CSMs? So this is a really great way to see the impact of incorporating customer advocacy into your day-to-day roles. So like Liz said, we know you have a lot that you're responsible for managing when it comes with customers. You may have a book of business of many, many customers. So here, what you can do when you start bringing in some of those advocacy motions is you can really start positioning yourself as more strategic because you're looking at some of those other outcomes beyond just the typical points of measurement. So that's one angle to look at it. And then you also can get into some of that retention support by nurturing your advocates, your customers, and turning them into advocates. So we talk about that opportunity of taking customers and turning them into advocates by that nurture, those nurture work streams. I've got an example for this. I'm going to show it in just a second, but it's a great way to showcase your work. So if your customers are being featured in case studies or being featured in speaking opportunities, you really get to see the results of all of that partnership and collaboration that you've invested into that customer and really be able to help them shine a light on the great work that they've been able to accomplish. And there really is no better way to put it than customer advocacy is customer success, because if your customers aren't successful, that's really the first step in unlocking advocacy. So with that, I want to go to this next example here. So we see this example here from Ari Hoffman, and this is an example from Amplitude. What I love about this is that there is a CSM who is actually mentioned and name dropped in the case study with that customer's from the customer success story. So this is fantastic. We love when this happens. You get an opportunity to actually get some of the spotlight and that recognition for being a part of your customer's journey and the success that they achieve. And just to throw in a little personal anecdote, a lot of the work that we do at Captivate is customer research when we're building advocacy programs and initiatives. So we will connect with customers and we'll ask them about how they want to engage with the organization and the type of activities that are motivating to them. And I can't count how many times I've heard someone say, okay, just wait a second, I really want to shout out my CSM because they have been so amazing or they've really helped us and I just want to make sure that they get recognized. So the work that you do as a CSM can continue to live on and get that spotlight shout out moment here when we do things like case studies or we have those opportunities where customers can share.
One nugget here I want to add for leaders is that
Yeah.
Ori, when he was there at Amplitude, it was a cornerstone for him, was that in every single story that went out, there needed to be a reference to a team member. So if you are a CS leader, looking out for your team in this way, building that partnership with marketing and making sure your people get recognized, even if it's not in the story, which some people and organizations won't allow, but if when that story goes public and there is that recognition, making sure that your team members are attached, that is very important for their growth as well.
Awesome. Okay, let's take a look at that poll, Corey, and see where people are at.
Can you see
Okay,
it? I can see it, Bianca.
I can
So,
see it.
so we,
Yeah.
okay, go ahead, go ahead.
No, this is great. So yeah, it popped up on another one of my monitors. I was waiting for it with much anticipation. No, this is great. Thank you everyone for sharing. So it seems like the majority of the audience today is more in that reactive ad hoc stage of integrating customer advocacy, which means there'll be a lot of value for you today in this webinar. So we hope you have some things that you can take back and incorporate into your work. But we do see some of you other attendees here are having more, are incorporating advocacy more into your playbooks, or whether that you have plays that are incorporating it as well. And for that one person who said that you're measured on holistic value, kudos, that's amazing. That is fantastic to see that there is that progression happening there. So love to see it.
Love that. And you know, if you're here, like we can present material all day, every day, but a ton of the value you get to coming to anything like this is when you talk to each other and share. I'd say that's like 50% of all the event value that I've been to. So I would love if you would share. If you're one of those, I see like, I don't know, a good 20% of you say that you're actually doing something in this field. By all means, share it in the chat or, you know, give examples to your peers here so that they understand, maybe just get their juices flowing. What could they be doing and how are you being measured and what are you doing in order to drive advocacy as CS? And by the way, if you're in one of that first bucket, you are so not alone. That is typically what we see. Okay.
I think this is the next
Yep.
piece here
Yep.
around, yeah.
This is, yeah. Okay. So we have a framework around how we think about driving advocacy, right? And whether you are doing this through a really fancy program, an executive cap, an advocacy program that has a larger amount of members in it, the framework is the same. I'll just even give you a hint. You can go ahead and use this framework for your personal relationships as well. This is very repeatable. It's so simple, but it is just so true because it's built on human psychology. So, how do we create advocacy? Well, first of all, we discover. We have to understand what's of value to someone in order to bring value to them, right? If we don't know what's valuable to our customers, and then as we think about those individuals who are your champions at their organizations, do we know what they're looking for beyond being successful with your product, beyond having a good relationship and with you? What is it that would be of value to them? You have to understand that in order to be able to do step two, which is nurture. We need to bring value first. Remember, we said that? That's what we call the advocacy mindset here at Captivate. That is the idea that I have to bring value before I can get value. So they've already given you value, you guys. They are paying you money. All right. That's the value they've given to you. Hopefully you're bringing value to them because you're helping them be successful with those products. But if you want them to go above and beyond and to increase the impact of those champions, you are going to have to nurture them. And that means you have to think of, what do they want? That's what you need to discover, nurture them, and then you can get to the point of activation. You don't want to jump just to activation, which a lot of organizations do. They just start asking their customers to do things, but they haven't done discover and nurture. So let's go through these very quickly. So discover is to actively seek to identify customers with the potential of becoming advocates, right? How do we know who these people are? How do we know who is right for this? How do we know what's going to motivate them? We have to go out and we have to do the work of discovery. So for example, in preparation, maybe for a QBR, maybe it's a healthy customer. Yay, awesome. You note as a CSM that there's high usage rates and they also have a positive NPS score. Okay, we all use NPS, so that's kind of our baseline. They're easy hanging fruit, low hanging fruit. All right, so maybe you as a CSM congratulate their client. Yeah, you have done fantastic. You want to acknowledge them. You want to give to them that they have done great work. And you also learned that one of their goals is to position themselves as sustainability leaders in their space, in their industry. Okay. So then you could ask the customer to rate their interest in participating. Oh, so how interested would you be in an opportunity to be on stage? Are you interested in growing your personal profile, or is this like you would like to get your executive onto something that has to do with sustainability? You could do this through scaled approach. Like you could see who all in your book matches these criteria of high usage rates and a good NPS score, or you could do this individually on this QBR. And then you could flag to the customer advocacy team, hey, proactively, imagine that, hey, I have a customer who's looking for this type of opportunity. Please, let's find them an opportunity or let's keep them in the pipe because they are an important account and they are a great champion for us. That's a very simple, simplistic example of discovery. You could always survey your customers. What do you want to be in more small groups? If you had to have any topic answered for you this year, what would you like to learn? Maybe you can make sure you get some of those assets to key contacts in your portfolio. Maybe you could connect them with an executive. So understand what's going to be of value to them. Especially it could be as a group in a scaled way if you have a lot of accounts, or for those really key accounts or relationships, you can find that on a very granular level. All right, so once you've discovered what it is that is going to motivate them, you want to focus on deepening that relationship by providing value to those customers, right? So let's bring that into an example as well. So if a CSM is working with a high performing customer, if that is you, maybe you want to share insights during a QBR about industry trends. Great. You are proactively bringing value to that contact without even being asked because you know that that's important information to them. And then you can invite that customer to co-present if they are interested, like we have shown that they might be interested in this topic or being positioned as an expert in this topic. So you can go ahead and ask them to co-present on a webinar, frame it as an opportunity to showcase their innovation. This is something that we believe would be of value to you. We've thought about this because we know this is of importance to you. Or you could provide early access to a beta program and request feedback. Saying, their input is critical. So you want to position them as what's important to them, and then you want to play into and find them opportunities. Find them the right opportunities. Not everyone wants to present, right? There's a lot of people who don't want to present at all. Maybe they just want to be connected to someone in their space who has the same problem. Maybe they're looking for opportunities to be part of a community. Maybe they just want knowledge and information and training. So discover what's of importance, motivate them or nurture them by giving them those opportunities or those assets. And then we get to activation, right? So transition those engaged customers. Hopefully they're now like, ooh, I'm getting value beyond my products and services. I am getting value from this organization or from this individual. And now we can target them for opportunities that make a lot of sense to them. And you provided that value. One way to think about this, I just hinted at it, it's money in the piggy bank. So if you think you want to put goodwill in that piggy bank. So before we go ask to withdraw and say, hey, I really need a review, or the customer marketing team, right? Gee, we need a Gartner peer review today. And so before that happens to you, right, you can't just start pulling from the goodwill of your customers. You have to have invested in those customers. You have to have put money in the bank. And then you're able to come at key opportunities, key times, and ask them to remove that investment. So like maybe the account needs saving and you've invested a lot of nurture and a lot of value to this contact. And then they're that champion who really speaks out and wants to help you save that account. Maybe they want to help you land another account or help another struggling account. When we've been able and we've really put that money in the bank, then we have the opportunity to ask them to go do that big on stage speaking opportunity. And then, as we said, if we're able to measure, thinking through measuring and keeping in mind, even anecdotally, even if you don't have the mechanisms to track all this, how much additional value is that account bringing to your organization, right? Very important. So remember, we talked about all these different advocacy outcomes. These are all different ways that your advocates can drive additional value for the organization. And of course, we circle this because this is where often advocates are under leveraged. We don't always think of this, especially as marketers, but this is another layer of opportunity, even in customer success, for you to utilize advocates to help with some of your own work in moving forward your other accounts and moving and helping you bring customers in to do a lot of things that would increase adoption and make your customer base more successful. All right. So as we move into examples with, I guess Bob is a good name for him or her, Sally or Bob, whatever you want. Okay, so a CSM example here is working with a satisfied customer, hopefully, and you have achieved a significant milestone with them on their customer journey. So you, of course, want to highlight that success and then suggest featuring them in a case study or offer to have the content team draft the case study, even better for review and save them the time. And then once approved, coordinate with the content team to promote the case study. Like this is very typical, right? This is a very typical activation that you might have with your customer as you get a happy, successful customer to then go out and tell that story. And then, of course, you want to iterate. So you want to refine and adapt advocacy strategies to meet the evolving needs of both the customer and the organization. So, some of these discovery motions that we're going to possibly talk through, some of the ways that you nurture what you can offer and nurture your customers. Some of them will land, some of them won't. So you always are going to be iterating on what you do with your customers as you learn more and more about them. Like you may offer like a speaking position to someone you think, oh yeah, they for sure would be amazing. Oh, no interest at all. So you will discover what will work and will not work with your specific account champions. All right. It's not always easy, as you know, and it's certainly not easy to do in a scaled way. And you all already know this. So post-sale customer engagement often cited customer advocacy activities as a top customer engagement priority for their organizations. But engaging customers at scale is not always easy. It's definitely not always easy. So you do have your customer marketing friends over there, but we also want to talk about ways to think about how to implement this into the customer journey. So there is a little bit of automation. There is a little bit of playbook written into this. So you're not always doing it one off with every single one of your account champions. All right, so Bianca is going to lead us through our 7-step framework for you to really get the juices flowing on how might I make this a repeatable process for my book of accounts.
All right, let's take a look at the 7-step journey. So just looking at a high level, we're going to talk through each of these 7 steps and look through some examples of what this looks like in practice. But you'll be able to follow along so you can start thinking how you might be able to start integrating some of this advocacy work into how you engage with your customers. So let's take a look at that first piece here. So we're going to go to the next slide and look at setting your goals. So this is always the first step before you jump into planning anything, is just understanding what are your organization's priorities as well as any gaps or pain points. And then the point that of at this stage of the planning is to really figure out how this work will fit into what your organization is trying to accomplish as a whole. So when we think about advocacy programs as well, or any types of advocacy initiatives, we're also thinking not just operating in a silo of like, what do we want this program to accomplish, but how can we work with our customers and how can we work with the organization to figure out how we can help solve some of the other pain points and challenges and just strategic priorities of the company as a whole. So Always recommend doing that initial work. You may already know what those company level priorities are, or you may need to document them. But starting out there is going to help make sure that you're successful in the strategic direction that you take. So if we look at the next slide here, this is just an example of starting off what that looks like to map all of the goals and to create that plan before you go into the actual execution of that to understand what you're hoping to accomplish by implementing life cycle advocacy.
Yeah, so a good I just to hone in on this a little bit. Our point here is, you can bring additional value from your book of accounts, but asking all your accounts to go write a review, that's valuable for sure. But if you're looking at how to position your holistic value of your accounts, you really do want to play into what is of most value to your organization. It might be reviews because maybe placement is really important, or maybe you're trying to get LLMs to feed the right content into those searches. But maybe that's not the priority. Maybe the priority is finding the perfect people to speak about breaking into a new segment. And so that might be the main focus. So this really helps you concentrate on, hey, if I'm going to write playbooks for the CSM team as a whole, if you're CS ops on here, you are so, so key to this. But if you're a CS leader, but even if you're an individual, start with how can I really play into a goal that is going to elevate what I am doing and the impact of my accounts.
Yes, absolutely, Liz. Good addition there. So the next piece of the journey is knowing the journey. So just really understand how your customer moves through their experience working with your organization. What are the different pathways that they might be taking? What are those milestones? How do they collaborate with different teams? Do they collaborate with different teams? So you could be looking at it from a CS perspective, from a product perspective, from an advocacy or customer marketing perspective. All of these teams may have their own view of the journey and what that looks like. So, taking a step back and working with these different teams and understanding, how can we take a look at that holistic journey? Because for the customer, they're hearing from everybody and they may not have the same clean journey that you're looking at from your CS perspective or that the product team is looking at. So, even from an advocacy perspective, when we work with our clients, sometimes the work that we do involves looking at all of these different journeys and plotting that out so that we can make sure that the customer experience feels like it's connected and it doesn't feel disjointed, like people within the organization aren't talking to each other. So if we look at the next slide here, this is an example of mapping the journey. So we've got land, adopt, expand, and renew. And you may have an example of this type of view of what your customer journey looks like. You may need to create it if you don't have that already. But in some form, it exists the way your customer moves through the organization. So this is really an important piece of integrating that life cycle advocacy approach into the work that you do. Because if you don't know the journey, then you won't be able to map those pieces that come in the next phase there, which is number three, or yeah, number three is identifying opportune moments. So what do we mean?
Oh, did we lose Bianca? Okay.
That are,
We lost you for a second, Bianca, but I
oh
think you're back.
no, am I
Yeah,
back?
I
I'm
think
so
so.
sorry. Okay, where did you
Round
lose
three,
me?
though. I mean, it was a perfect cut right at three. Big cliffhanger. What are opportune moments?
Okay, let's jump right back in. What are opportune moments? So there are points in time on the customer journey that are most convenient or are going to lead to likely success for customer advocacy, motivation, or activation interaction. So think about it as right place, right time. It's going to be where you are already primed to connect with your customers and identify those areas for advocacy. So with that, let's take a look at the next slide here. And this is the same view, but if we just jump forward here, you'll see that by having that view of how your customers are moving through their customer journey with you, you can start pointing out those opportune moments where you can start asking or engaging for advocacy, having already done some of that nurture work to make sure that your bank isn't empty when you make a withdrawal, to then start planning out how you will build this life cycle advocacy motion.
Just real quick to point out, you can see that this client saw a lot of opportunity at achieving first value of success. So as they went and they looked at the different journeys, you can see the different who owns those little touch points along the journey. They established like, oh, maybe we're not doing enough. This would be a key moment to nurture and activate happy or successful customers at that first point of value achieved.
Awesome. Okay, so then the next step, once you know your priorities within the organization, you figure out what pain points you want to address, you know, which you have to focus on to drive value for your organization. You've looked at the life cycle journey, you've looked at what those opportune moments are. Now you need to map the motion. So, what are the processes, the workflows that you want to build in so that you can automate those moments and figuring out, you know, what are all the different pieces of technology? How are you actually going to bring this to life? So here is an example of what this could look like. So you could do it in a table format. You could take a more visual view if you'd like to map out a chart there to see the flow. But this is an example of a client who had taken this step here to map out the renewal activation flow of asking for a review. So you can see here there are many different pieces around who the audience is, what is the trigger, what are the different touch points, how are we actually going to measure the success of this, and all the different pieces that are going to make that flow a reality behind the scenes. So this piece is something that you would do for each of those opportune moments that you want to start automating and figuring out how they work into the existing life cycle.
I feel like we should clarify too, real quick. An opportune moment might be a great place to discover, to nurture,
Mm-hmm.
or to activate. So,
Yes.
for instance, obviously, as you're starting onboarding, great opportunity to do some discovery. That makes complete sense at that point in the journey. But maybe I will, and Bianca knows I like to get on my soapbox here. Renewal, which is highly ignored as an opportune moment to build and establish relationship or activation with the client, maybe that's where it's a great opportunity to say, hey, looks like our relationship is continuing. I would love if you would tell our, other people who are searching a little bit more about us by giving us a review, or, hey, it's been a year. Tell me what are you interested in getting on a stage this year to tell about your journey? So thinking about how those opportune moments may lead to discover, nurture, or activation. Sorry, Bianca. Keep going.
No, I love that, Liz, and just like to double down on that point that you had made there around like renewals, for example, being able to have that like that opportune moment where you know you're at a good place with your client, you know that they are happy, it's it's all positive feelings. That's a really great place to then make that ask, but not having it be a transaction, right? So we don't want to move into transactional advocacy where it feels like we're asking them to do something without making that nurture or investment into the relationship first. Okay, I'm going to move really quickly here because I want time for Q&A, but this last one, last few pieces here, 5 through 7, I'll move through. But number 5, confirm feasibility. This is where things get a little bit tricky, right? Because you've mapped it, you've laid the vision out, you know what you want to go and do, and now you need to actually figure out if you can or how you can and the tools and processes that you're working with. So you may end up back at the drawing board at this stage here, but this is just an example of figuring out what's actually happening during the life cycle. Where are things recorded? Are there any caveats that we need to be mindful of? What tools can we use? Can they integrate? So you really get into the practicality and the technicality of bringing these work streams and motions to life. So definitely an important part of the journey, but you may run into some bumps in the road at this phase.
Well, and you will have to work with those tool owners,
Yes.
absolutely. But there's a lot you can do within your CSP directly as well, and there's some manual things you can do too. But this is where other people are going to have to come in and help you confirm the viability of what you've just mapped out.
Yes. Okay. Number 6, now that you've figured it out, you're all good. You've worked with your different stakeholders. You are now going to implement the flow. So you're looking at technology, templates, playbooks. This is really everything that is going to help you bring it to life, working with those internal experts. So whether that's administrators, engineers, they are going to be the ones that do the heavy lifting on those tools to make sure that everything works the way that you've envisioned it. Okay, so here's an example. So this is the reference motion. That's an example here from Gong, where they're going through that flow, right? So all the different touch points for asking customers to be a part of the reference program here. So this is an automated process. You can look into product engagement metrics, sentiment evaluation, and this is also something that Churn Zero can do as well. So they have AI agents that can surface those advocates or referenceable customers. And then you also have with Churn Zero a Gong integration that can pull in that customer engagement and sentiment information into Churn Zero. So many different ways to do this when you're looking at how to actually bring this to life and what that tooling component looks like. Okay, and then number seven, measure and iterate. An incredibly important part of any program or initiative that you are running is always to measure the impact and make sure that you're seeing your desired results. You may not be seeing the impact that you had anticipated, so figuring out why, what's not working, what are the wrong signals or triggers, so that you can iterate, because iterating is part of the learning process. So might not get it right the first time, but then the fun part is tweaking that and continuing to get it just right so that you can get those outcomes that you're looking
And you
for.
want to know the beautiful part? When you guys are working with lifecycle advocacy and you're building these workflows underneath to discover, nurture, and activate your customers, if the workflow doesn't work, like, no, nobody gives us a review at that point in this journey that we thought was going to be a great opportune moment for asking for a review. If you scrap it, nobody knows. Nobody cares. It's not like those cabs and communities that your customer marketing friends are building. Those can't just be pulled out without lots of comms and reasons and all of that. You can be really scrappy with this workflow creation. And this is just so exciting because this means you too can be advocate marketers in a sense. You already play such a huge role in the creation of advocates. Why should you not be building and then measuring the impact of your advocates and then showcasing that holistic value back to your organization? This is a huge opportunity for CS leaders and CSMs to increase the and showcase additional value that they're bringing beyond just that ARR. Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Bianca. That was great 7 steps. And you're right. We were pushing through. We're being so fast. We're gonna leave a little bit of room for questions. We want your questions. So please ask them now if you have them. We will get to some of them. But first, I'm just going to say, like you saw in that poll, there's not a lot of CS teams that are really thinking about advocacy this way. We're really seeing community professionals starting to really think about how community drives advocacy. But CS is so close. We have to do everything in advocacy with you all. You are an instrumental team. But it's still a new process, and CSPs are just starting to create that functionality that allows you to do this easily within the customer journey. So we are asking, will you take this little survey? If you take this little survey, and we want you to share an example. If you have an example of lifecycle advocacy that you have built or your organization does have in place, just one question that asks that. Or if you don't, you could just put, okay, what opportune moment do you see as most right? Where, hey, we could really do either a discovery, nurture, or activation motion there. So either way, simple question, looking to get your thoughts back on this topic as we talk to more CS professionals about advocacy, but it is still pretty new. Bianca, I don't know if you have the link available, but
Yeah, I can get the link as well.
Just in case people don't want to pull out their phone at
Yeah,
this time. So
no
we'll leave
problem.
this here so you can take the survey. And if you, it says to win, forgot, prize, marketing. So if you fill out the survey, we have, I don't know if any of y'all have Sugar Wish. We love sending Sugar Wishes. They're so fun. And Sugar Wish has a holiday Sugar Wish, and we would love to send a lucky draw, a Sugar Wish. So by all means, hey, you know what? Maybe it'll be you. So fill out the survey and get it into us. And with that, Corey, I'm going to turn it
Yeah.
back to you.
Absolutely. Thank you both for that presentation. We do have a number of questions that have come in, so I'm going to jump
Great.
in so we can get to a few before we run out of time. One question is, once you identify your advocates, how often do you ask or withdraw from that nurture bank to do a review, speak, or case study? Is there a point where you're asking too much, and how do you
Absolutely.
measure that?
Good
Absolutely.
question.
Okay, that is a great question. And I don't know if there's a firm measurement per se
Mm,
of when they've tapped out and you've used all that goodwill up. You probably, though, have a sense of the balance between what is being given of additional value to that customer versus what you're withdrawing. If you have an given any value to them beyond just like your normal CSM calls or the normal opportunities of going to a webinar, taking this certification that's already out there, you probably haven't established additional nurture. So you need to think through that and make sure there's a healthy balance. So if someone takes an action for you, obviously, at the very least, thank them. Thanking them can be a great way to call out what they've done. Hey, send them a sugar wish. If you haven't sent a sugar wish, they're super fun. They're super easy. But there are ways to always keep paying and filling back up that piggy bank. So my suggestion to you is try to have playbooks where, like, if someone takes an active advocacy, you know how you're going to fill up that playbook, even if it's as simple as saying thank you through a gift. Maybe your CEO or and someone above them says thank you. One of the most fun things is if they do a really big active advocacy for you, write their boss and tell them what amazing things they're doing with the product and how well they are moving their success forward with your tool. Really call them out to the people who it matters to them to get that kind of recognition in front of them.
I love that idea. Our next question is, what are some top customer indicators that CSMs can look for as they approach advocacy?
Do you want to take this, Bianca?
Yeah, I'm just giving it some thought on some of what some of the indicators are. And it's, really, you will have those customers that you're working with that, you've got a really great relationship with. They're open to engaging with you. They're doing well when it comes to, adoption, and they are willing to speak. I mean, it's a great thing to even ask your customers what what they're open to. Like I know Liz mentioned this during the presentation as well. Even with the last question that we had, how often should you be asking customers to engage? They'll often tell you, they'll have like, oh no, you can tap me, once a quarter, however often they like. So when it comes to indicators, I would say customers that are open to sharing their story, maybe they're active in community. That could be a really great way to look as well to see who's primed for advocacy. Liz?
Yep. And there's some scalable metrics you can look at as well. So for obviously NPS, low hanging fruit, but I wouldn't just go NPS, right? You can look at pairing metrics together, such as, okay, well, what's their adoption usage? Do you have access to that type of data? How many features and functionality have they adopted recently? Have you seen increase in their account? Like, so for instance, if they are contract renews and you've upsold them and you're seeing that they're willing to invest even more in that relationship, that is a good indicator that they might be ready for further acts of advocacy. So looking at things like that, how often are they coming to your education and training? That shows an active interest in what you're doing. And like Bianca said, activity in the community is also key as well. And then of course, for your key relationships, you will know the strength of that relationship and you can make calls on that one-to-one. But if you're looking for scaled ways as a CS operation to say, okay, who should we be leveraging? Those are some of the metrics. And so if you're looking in your CSP to at adoption playbooks or success playbooks that might already live in churn zero, how far are they moving along that path to success? That's another big indicator.
And health
Awesome.
score as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Of
Just like,
course, yeah, health
looking
Yep.
score.
at green, starting with your green customers. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yep.
don't ask your red customers, although you could do a really cool campaign around nurture, right? Discovery nurture. Like, so if you have a bunch of reds are tricky, but let's say you have a bunch of
Willows.
middle folks, why not create a campaign that's all about discovery and nurture? And then hopefully you can convert some of those people to be in those metric signals that are healthy, and then you can activate them. But again, you've got to get to them to a place where you understand what they value. What are the gaps that you can fill, and then nurture them, bring them additional value above the expectation, and then you can activate them.
Those are some great data point suggestions. Our next question says, for an early stage startup, what are some suggested advocacy options to approach customers with? And maybe not just startups, maybe it's someone that's starting advocacy programs for the first time. What are some things that they should kick off with?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just jump in with one here, and then Liz, if you've got some other ideas as well. But when you're just getting started, know who your advocates are, and if you can just quickly document what that success use case looks like, so that you know if you wanted to go and create a case study or a success story, or have that short testimonial that you can put up on your website or use in some marketing materials. Being able just to have that documented testimonial, it could be a quick little video. They don't have to be high production either. There used to be a trend for like customer stories to be very high production. We've moved towards more informal video capture as well. So anything that you can do to start building your library is a great place to start.
I just want to say too, that's what I was going to say, Bianca. The premise of advocacy is that their voice is much more important than your voice.
Hmm.
Their voice is trusted in their communities. Your brand voice is not. And the sooner you accept that and understand you have more authenticity, more power, leveraging someone else to sing your praises versus you. This is just like real life, guys. Nobody likes someone who talks about themselves and how great they are. But if someone else genuinely says how great someone is, then you listen. Then there's authenticity and trust there. So lead with the customer voice always, always, in all situations. That is your key differentiator as an organization when it comes to your marketing messaging.
Awesome. Well, we're at the top of the hour. There are a few more questions, but I will share those with you, Liz and
Yeah,
Bianca. Maybe we can do a blog post or something to get these
Yeah,
answered.
love it.
Um, But I just want to remind everyone that we were recording today. You will get an email with a link to the recording and a PDF of the slides. We also got some questions on that. And at the end of this webinar, you'll see a survey pop up just to provide your feedback on today's event. We'd love to hear from you and get your feedback. Thank you again so much, Liz and Bianca. Really appreciated this. And thank you for doing your own survey and giveaway. That's exciting too.
Thank you.
yeah, yeah, we double surveyed you. Sorry, everyone. Yeah, thank you so much for spending one of your last days of work with us. We so appreciate you, and we are happy, happy, happy for you to come and ask us any questions.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you. Bye.
you.